Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We give a warm welcome to Dr. Shadee, alhamdulillah, for joining us here today, leaving his home 3 o'clock, 3:30, to be with us, spending this day here. And we've been working on trying to get him to come for some time, alhamdulillah, but with Allah's fadl, we've been able to arrange that for today. So you have all read, it was shared with you yesterday, the article that he had co-authored, and we will have hopefully a good discussion on that. Key thing is we want all of us to be active participants. That's how Shaykh likes to teach as well, and that's the most you're going to get. You've read it before, he'll be sharing things, ask questions, engage, and the good question is half of knowledge. So if you ask a good question, all of us benefit from that. And for those of you who are unaware, mashallah, he is an imam in New Brunswick, in New Jersey. And he studied traditionally, both in New Jersey and as well as overseas in Morocco and Yemen. And he got his master's in Rutgers, and he got his PhD from College of London. And he taught at Yale for 6 years before becoming an imam and religious director at New Brunswick Masjid. So alhamdulillah, it's a pleasure to welcome him. And we hope Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala allows us to benefit, inshallah ta'ala, from his words. Jazakumullahu Khairun.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله والصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. Shaykh Azimuddin came around to our masjid a couple months back, and we talked about Alamat Sa'ah and Akhir Zaman. And that talk was really important because it's a critical subject that gives people hope. Now, once you guys all leave madrasa life, and I've been given a book on madrasa life, which I haven't actually finished yet, called the Silk Movement Letters. Anyone familiar with that? Oh, it's one of the major mashayikh from Pakistan. Authored a book called, you should just look it up, it's called the Silk Movement Letters, which is a back and forth between one of the major shuyukh of Deoband, writing about daily life in the madrasa and some things that happened, and it's one of those must-reads according to the one who gave it to me. So I'm sure that you'll get your hands on it eventually. But there's a big difference between the life of studying and when the rubber hits the road. All right. The way I like to put it is, when the rubber hits the road, it's oftentimes something totally different. Okay. And the people who come that you're interacting with on a daily basis are not the people that you're meant to be spending the rest of your lives with. You're meant to be spending the rest of your lives with people who are on the exact, maybe opposite end of the spectrum that you're pulling towards min al-dhulumati ila nur. That's really your job. And Abdullah ibn Alwi al-Haddad, Imam al-Haddad, he's our major, like you have, there are the Deobandi Akabir. So we have something similar with the Ba'alawi in Hadramaut. And Imam Abdullah ibn Alwi al-Haddad, he's the Qutb, you could say, of the Ba'alawi Minhaj. Their main sheikh, the founding sheikh, is Sayyidina al-Faqih al-Muqaddam. He was the first sheikh to break the sword and adopt tasawwuf. He was a Shafi'i scholar, and his tribe was a tribe amongst the tribes, fighting back and forth with one another, and he was the first one to break the sword, meaning he declared that his people will never seek power again. They will never seek power. They will be arbitrators only, okay? Or outsiders completely, or in the khidmah of the Muslims. They will break the sword, and he picked up the khirqah. So he broke the sword and picked up the khirqat at-tasawwuf. So that's Sayyid al-Faqih al-Muqaddam. Fast forward now, Abdullah bin Alawi al-Haddad. One of the main points that Imam al-Haddad made that became the minhaj of the Ba'alawi Sayyids thereafter, until today it sort of manifested worldwide with Imam and Sheikh Habib Umar bin Salim bin Hafidh, Hafidhahullah, is that the purpose and function of a talib ilm is da'wah. And the purpose and function of an imam and an alim is da'wah. And the bigger and the more knowledgeable an imam gets, the bigger his mission in da'wah gets. And that all of the mursaleen, and as you know, the nabiyyin from amongst the anbiya are those specific mursaleen, the rusul. And not all of the anbiya are rusul, only some are selected to become rusul. Okay, from the anbiya that Allah chose, some only of them 313. And some say 300 and some bid'a ashar, or maybe around 313, 300 and some odd. That's one way to say it. Okay, Jammun Ghafir, which is a big number for Rusul. And what is the one thing that all the Rusul have in common? Not all of them raised the dead. Not all of them not all of them ruled. Not every Rasul ruled his people. But what is one thing that all the Rusul have in common? Is that they did da'wah. That's something they all had in common. Not every Nabi has to do da'wah. You never heard of the da'wah of Sayyidina Ayyub, right? The da'wah of Sayyidina Ayyub as his dua, but you never seen him do a da'wah movement, have you? Right? Or have an efforts in da'wah, right? So the da'wah is the job and the function of the Rasul. Being so, Imam al-Haddad held and said in his main book, an explanation of this is a Da'wah Tamma in the introduction, a Da'wah Tamma, in which he says that the function, the highest function, is to give da'wah. Okay? Because this is ikhraj min al-dhulumati ila al-nur. But as for the ulama who merely stay in the shade of the light, in other words, they never leave an-nur. They never make an effort to go and pull people from the dhulumat into the nur. He said, even no matter what they accomplish and do, their maqam will never reach the maqam of those seeking to pull people, do the job of the rusul, the prophets, which is pulling people from dhulumat ila nur. Now when you do that, okay, a person now at this point has to, in the madaris, he learns the text. But when he is out there dealing with people, you learn something else, which is known as the context. All right? The context. You have text and you have context. And here's the irony of the whole thing. The irony of that is that oftentimes one imagines that if he just really masters the mutun and the text really well, that he's going to do da'wah well. That's not the case at all. Actually, you also need to study and master, and unfortunately even live the context. So who is always the best of the dua? I've always found, and in Dar al-Mustafa it was the same, mostly the worst students. Because the worst student, he doesn't have his head way up there, okay? He's actually living in the earth with daily life with everyone else, knowing the ups and downs of people. And then he goes out into da'wah, okay? And when he's able to do da'wah, he knows exactly, when he's looking at someone, he knows what he's going through in his life. And he's able to give them what matters, okay? So this is oftentimes a person has to actually get this seed, this belief in the importance of da'wah has to come early. Otherwise, what is your thamra? What is the thamra of someone who has studied? Either you pull them out, or فَمِنَ الظُّلُمَاتِ إِلَى النُّورِ, or if they're convinced to come into a madrasa like this, you take them from step 1 all the way up to step 5. But in the process, it's your obligation and duty to inform them of your ultimate function is da'wah. And when you send an ambassador to a country, The goal of the ambassador is not simply to look good for the sake of the country, okay? And is not solely the job of, if he's the ambassador from some random country, let's say Zimbabwe, to come to America and make sure all the Zimbabwean people remember that they're from Zimbabwe. That's not the goal. The goal is to the agenda. What is the agenda of Zimbabwe? To ensure that the Zimbabwean interests are being served. Okay? Likewise, what is our job? Our job is to take what we have, which is sometimes, as Abu Hassan al-Shadee said, "Oh Allah, I feel I'm not benefiting and I'm nothing." He received an ilham and he said, "Ya Abu Hassan, you are the one who's in the misk shop. You are in a large misk shop, which means you stop smelling misk after a while. You stop even remembering that you're supposed to smell misk, but it's all misk." Okay? It's all misk. So this is Abu Hassan Shadli was told that, and our job is to remember that we have something amazing, and what we have is only known to us when we actually see the darkness and the dhulumat that people are in. And then you realize, wow, I took this for granted this whole time. Okay, that we have a group of people, we don't have zina issues. A regular Muslim doesn't, average Muslim can fall into zina, of course, right? But is it an epidemic that everyone's doing zina and she's doing zina and he did zina and there's an illegitimate, is it a norm? No, it's not a norm. Amongst regular mosque-going people, it's not a norm. It's there, it happens, of course it happens. It happens too in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay? The ayat of hudud on zina came down at a time when two Sahaba at the same time came in and found a man with their wives. Okay? And even before the hudud of zina came down, they were asking about it. Sa'd ibn Mu'adh asked about it. Okay? And then he said, "Can I kill him?" And the Prophet ﷺ said, "You cannot." And Sa'd was upset. He said, "Then what should I do? Shut the door and make sure and excuse myself?" All right? You can read about it in Suyuti's Asbab al-Nuzul, these ahadith from Surah An-Nur. So, we don't have those issues. We don't have issues of meaningless of life that leads to suicide. We don't realize what we have. We don't realize what we have, and we don't realize that we, all of us, are living in a slow motion train wreck. The life of an average, I'm not even going to say American, the average person who does not living an active life in Islam is a train wreck, but it's in slow motion. You think life is going on normal, every day is like, no, but we're in a slow motion train wreck, as if a train between two mountains has fallen off and derailed and is slowly, we're just waiting to hit the ground. Slowly collapsing, turning, okay? Intoxication, zina, meaninglessness of life, absolute injustice in financial interactions, depression. Now you have even major identity crisis, gender crisis, violence that you don't even understand. It makes no sense anymore. Yeah, and you go to schools and you see security guards as if you're coming to a military base. That's the schools these days. So the degree of in order, there's no order, lack of order completely, is something that you may not realize is out there. But every once in a while, you should be reminded of the chaos that you're going to go to in the outside world, where this is our safe haven, right? Like our Safinat Nuh. These masajid in these schools is Safinat Nuh. Okay? And Safinat Nuh is a place you have to come back to every day, at night. But eventually someday you're going to go out there into another world. Even maybe your own family homes, when you go home at night, is chaos. So now, what is that? What is all this, what I'm saying? All of what I'm saying is that da'wah is the goal of the student. And the world and the da'wah requires knowledge of the context. And you have to know that the context is reaching a dangerous level of volatility. and that the fundamentals of what it even means to be a human being is in doubt and question. The new fad is killing yourself in places that are get attention. This is the latest fad that you're going to see copycats doing this, right? So this amount of disorder in the outside world has never been this much ever before. Now, what does this lead us to? The third point is, what is the middle, okay? And what is happening between what we have and the outside world? And in that, one of the things that you're going to face, you have to all be very aware of, is that many Muslims, as Muslims are human beings, are now getting affected by this disorder. Even for us, it's a disorder. If a woman looks at her life and says that their main goal is to be just like a man, we say this is complete disorder. Because no man should be like any other creature except a man. And that is defined by God and His Messenger. And no woman should aspire to be like any other creature except a woman, as defined by Allah and His Messenger and the examples. Ummahat al-Mu'mineen, right? The Mu'mineen, they have a method. امرأة فرعون ومريم بنت عمران سورة التحريم. Okay, so those examples. So even the aspiration of half the earth, women, oftentimes isn't out of order. Amongst these is something that I wanted you all to read. It's a heavy read, but once you get to my part, it's easy because I'm just summarizing and giving a response, which I'm sure you could have all done yourselves. This is not even scholarship. This is daruri knowledge. Just putting it into words that people could read. That's the only accomplishment. But this is an example, all right, of how many Muslims get affected by the disorder around them. Okay, this article here, raise your hand if you made your way through the whole article. All right, good. What's that? Oh, okay. So the first part of it is fine. The ahkam then that regarding the issue of luwata is, he basically gives the same ahkam that we have, pretty much. I don't think there's really an issue there. Okay, but what is the question? The question now is it permissible for a Muslim that he's not going to actually believe in these things, but in a sense to support other people to do what is haram in the name of, right, in the name of the law, the system in the world that we live in which everyone else's rights get supported? This is the main question that goes around. We're living under a law, a secular law, okay, in which everyone has the right to do what they wish. And in order to keep this up, we have to support that everyone gets their rights. And this is a big problem for Muslims, right? Because we are in a very funny situation. We're enjoying the rights to have madaris like this. I can guarantee you can't have a majlis or a gathering or a school like this in Cairo, for example. It would be shut down immediately. So we have this right. Who gave us this right? The law, secular law. The secular law also wants to give rights to everyone else who does fahshat, like these folks, right? So you, as a Muslim, are you going to enjoy the right that you were given and not support the same rights given to those other groups? This is the bind that many Muslims find themselves in, and they answer and say to themselves, yes, we will support, because we were given this right, we will support those others. And this is a mas'ala that is very popular and a big problem. But anytime you get a Muslim to get through this mas'ala with a Muslim, then that Muslim will have blockaded off 70 baba min ash-shar, 70 pathways to evil, if they can get through the logic of why we won't do this, okay? And how to position ourselves politically. So this, you have to understand, is the fitna that some of the Muslims, and some of them very popular Muslims, scholars even some of them, okay, that they would say that they're going to do this. Now what is our response? Someone could give me one simple, from the students, not from the teachers, a simple hadith or a nas about this subject, and even what is even the bab of this subject matter, why we wouldn't be able to support something like this. Someone give me a nas. Say again. Great. وَلَا تَعَاوَنُوا عَلَى الْإِثْمِ وَالْعُدْوَانِ. That's from the book. Now one from the Sunnah. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا. Good. Well, that makes sense. مَنْ رَأَى مِنْكُمْ مُنْكَرًا. You're not only supposed to not support it, you're supposed to change it, right? Let alone support it. So if by mafhum al-awla, if you're supposed to change it, you're definitely not supposed to support it. And also, an even more direct one, لَعَنَ اللَّهُ مَنْ آوَى مُحْدِثًا, right? The curse of Allah is on someone who supports a sedition, right? A muhdith, even in Sharia, is even one of the least, muhdith, that term, is for the least harm. So for example, if we're all sitting here and we all have a norm of dress, okay, someone comes with and makes has pink hair or something like this. Yeah, you can't even say it's imitating women, because women don't have pink hair, right? Or blue hair, or navy blue hair. You're not imitating women, because women don't have navy blue hair. But what you're doing is something that's outside the urf, right? It's not in the urf. This is is it a kabira? No, we can't say it's a kabira from the kabair, right? This is the least thing. Or someone comes in with something else, right? That is not even from a kabair. So muhdith can be the lowest. It could also be the highest. So the word muhdith has a huge range. And in this sense, it is someone sowing sedition in the land. Okay? So the argument here is that we have to be fair, and we have to be consistent in the secular law. And our response is, when we look at the law and the secular law, what we have to do is recognize that this law doesn't apply to us to begin with. This is something we don't aspire to begin. Sorry, not that it doesn't apply. It's something we don't aspire to begin with. Right? So the idea of consistency in the law is something that we don't aspire to be consistent with a secular law. You can never have consistency between a secular law and a religious law. It's never going to work. So the idea of secular law is something that you're going to need to understand before you go out there, especially at the MSAs. In the MSAs and in the colleges, secular law and secular values have begun to dominate over Islamic values. Okay? Now let's get to the section where what I really wanted to read for you all, for those who didn't have a chance to read it. Yeah, you can ask questions right away if you want. Yeah. Here's how it works. There's cosmology, how we view the universe. Right? How we view the universe. How do we view the universe? It has a khaliq, and there are anbiya, and we have qudra, right? This khaliq has qudra, and he's gave us free will, okay? And the rusul teach us how to live. Cosmology is the first thing. The second thing is epistemology. Based upon cosmology, you're going to have epistemology. And what is epistemology? Epistemology is where you go for the truth. Where do we go for the truth? Obviously, al-kitab wa sunnah. Okay? And then you have methodology. Methodology is usul al-fiqh. And here we can have difference of opinion, methodology, okay? On some matters, but not on others. Methodology. So you end up with cosmology, epistemology, methodology. Okay? What's the result? Rulings, laws, legislation. This is the result, legislation. What laws exist? What is right and what is wrong? Okay? Morality and legislation. So, if we have a problem with morality and legislation, we're going to first go to the bottom. Okay? If we have any differences on right and wrong, morality, legislation, we're going to go to the bottom. Cosmology. Do we see the world in the same way? If the answer is no, then there's no point in even discussing legislation. This is what I was trying to saying with Dr. Brown here. There is no point in trying to be consistent. You're never going to have two trains that don't start in the same location and aren't ending in the same location. If we're ever parallel, it's an accident. Right? It's merely an accident that we're ever parallel. Okay? It's a coincidence. It's like two trees, the leaves touch. They're not touching by design, by accident they touch. But the rest of the tree doesn't touch. So, the way we view the world is so different than the way that the kuffar view the world. And by the way, we've become so soft on the issue of kuffar, right? Like, people don't want to touch that subject anymore, don't want to ever say it, because there's so many converts, and converts have families. I recognize that. We all have neighbors, we have co-workers, we all recognize that. But the kuffar view the world in such a radically different way. When they go for the truth, if they believe in any truth, that's epistemology now, right? So when they go for the truth, and we go to the truth, we're going to different watering holes, right? Our mashrab is totally different, right? And then at this point, methodology doesn't even matter, right? The method doesn't even matter. So a secular law based upon religious law or otherwise, we have laws, we have our ahkam regarding secular law, is that if we have a mithaq, we do have a contract by force, which is your citizenship, right? By virtue of, what is citizenship? It's your contract that you're going to follow the law, that you're not going to sow sedition in the land, that if anyone tries to attack the land, you have to defend it. That's our wajibat that we accept. Okay? We also have laws on hijrah. When do we make hijrah? Right? The students that are on Juz 28, we make hijrah when we can no longer, when they try to remove us from our homes or stop us from practicing our religion, then hijrah actually becomes obligatory. I don't know if the Hanafi fiqh differs from Maliki fiqh, but in Maliki fiqh, if you're born in a place, as long as you can practice your deen, the adhan can be called, the salah can be established, and no one is forcing you to do anything of the fundamental matters, not the furu', but the fundamentals. Alright? Kaba'ir, for example. No one's forcing you to do them, and no one's stopping you from doing your fara'id, then you don't have to leave. You don't have to make hijrah. So to your point, right, a secular law it can be based on religious law, right? But it's still going to go to a different epistemology and a different cosmology. In America, Christianity is merely a memory, right? And just a part of the morality. But that's all going to change. Yeah. You know what? I think we'll just go straight to the discussion and leave this off. You should just read this, because most of what I wanted to get through, we're already discussing it and bringing it up. So it's probably much better for us to just open it up right now and discuss whatever you guys want to talk about. Because my main point was that the student of knowledge, his role is da'wah. And the du'at are of two types. The one who actually goes fishing for the people, creates an interest for them, and then the one who builds them up, which is the teachers in the madaris. Those are the two fields in our da'wah. And that in order for us to be efficient in these two jobs, we must understand the context of the world that we live in. You have to recognize the importance of understanding the context. And how are you going to do that? By interaction. by interacting with the people that you're going to do your da'wah to. Okay? And then to now be careful of the the gray area in between of the many Muslims who are now getting affected by the context adversely. And that involves people no longer believing in the obligation of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Right? People no longer believing in the sole salvation of the religion of Islam, that Deen al-Islam is what you have to believe in. Or people stop believing in eschatology. Al-Masih al-Dajjal, Sayyidina Isa ibn Maryam, Imam al-Mahdi, that this is now something people are not believing in. This is something popular now that they don't believe in. Okay? Questions, doubts about the difference between Sunni and Shi'i. Very basic things that you all know already. Right? But this is what's coming up. Okay? And the situation with women and gender. Okay? You have to be really sharp and make sure that everything you say about women and gender is grounded in evidence. In evidence. Right? The irrefutable evidence. And on top of that, you have to understand how do we understand gender to begin with? Okay? Gender to begin with is that the male is a manifestation of sifatul jalal. Sifatul jalal, attributes of strength and majesty and justice. The female should not be imitating the male. She is a manifestation of sifatul jamal, beauty, lutf, rahmah, mercy. That ultimately this is what men and women are. Human manifestations of these divine attributes. Because the issue of women is such a humongous issue, it's affected every household, every campus, every masjid. Because ultimately when we live amongst the people, we soak up all of their problems. All right, so again, that's a summary. Anyone wants to bring up anything else, we can open it up for a discussion. I think that might be more fruitful as well. So I was wondering, what context would that be for him? As a general rule, repeat the question? Sure. He said, there was a line I said in here that we are not obligated in every context to advocate for the sacred law. First of all, al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahi an al-munkar. Your question falls under the bab of al-amr bil-ma'ruf wal-nahi an al-munkar. Commanding right and forbidding wrong. Commanding right and forbidding wrong, ironically, has never really been bab min abwab al-fiqh, but in fact it is a chapter from chapter of fiqh. Okay? A matter of fiqh. It's under da'wah. Okay? Commanding right and forbidding wrong is never obligatory at every moment that you see the wrong. The silence of the Prophet ﷺ equals permissibility, right? If the Prophet ﷺ is silent in front of an action and he sees it and we all see it happening, and Rasulullah ﷺ remains silent, this is tacit approval. That's only the Prophet ﷺ. That is not everyone else. A alim can see a munkar, and if he deems that there will be more munkar resulting from his nahi an al-munkar, from forbidding it, that more munkar will manifest, then he is within his haqq and his right to remain silent. That's his ijtihad on the matter, he can remain silent. But he must speak about it eventually. Right? Publicly and openly, it's his duty. Eventually. Likewise, the Prophet ﷺ gave us an example. If you're sitting with a group of people and they do something wrong, did the Prophet ﷺ say, you're doing wrong right now? No. He waited until Jum'ah and stood up on the minbar and said, some people do X, Y, and Z. Okay? So, a Muslim is not obligated at every single time he sees a munkar to forbid it. Nor is he obligated at every single moment in time to be giving the da'wah with his tongue, right? And to be advocating for an element of Sharia. In this case, given that we are subjects of a law, and our citizenship handicaps us by making us agree that we're going to live under this secular law, right? At that point, there is no sense and no meaning, now that we've made that agreement vis-a-vis our citizenship, to then go and ask the Congress and the President to apply something else. It wouldn't even make sense. So that's the meaning of that idea, that we have to recognize that we're here, we can give da'wah to all the people we want, but as for legislation, the door is shut upon us to ask for legislation based upon al-Kitab wa Sunnah. And I would even say that we should cede, means give up and set aside and step away from all attempts to affect legislation, except maybe lobbying with certain other religious groups on moral issues, such as the Christians. Mainly the Christians are pushing hard for some kind of reform of the internet, where the internet doesn't have to be a sewage pipe of fahsha coming into our homes and phones. That's what it is. It's sewage. It would be good if it was sewage. You know that if the government said, you're obligated in this mosque to have a pipeline of najasa spill into the masjid, this is lighter in the sight of Allah than to have pornography coming into the phones and the computers. That every day you have to clean up najasa and you have to smell it in the mosque is lighter in the sight of Allah than pornography coming into the eyes of a mu'min. And the Prophet ﷺ said, if the whole Kaaba is destroyed, right, it's lighter in the sight of Allah than if the feelings of a Muslim are hurt. His feelings, not his huquq, right? The feelings of a Muslim, not his rights, right? The destruction of the Kaaba is less. So the Christians are in that reform, and that's something we can support. But otherwise, you can't affect legislation. That's one of the things about being a minority in a non-Muslim land, is that you cannot advocate your own legislation. We can advocate it to ourselves, and we can do da'wah to the people, but to the government, we can't advocate it. Yeah. What kind of legislation? If it's something totally neutral, like save the elephants, save the trees, right, decrease the highway tolls, that's all fine. But that's not book and sunnah, right? Yeah, like get the Eid off or whatever. I mean, and all that, is that like, you're going to change life with that? It doesn't, it's no big deal, right? You know, that's no big deal. But something like, something that would really matter for us is not going to happen. And we have ourselves, by agreeing, have shut that door. So, yeah. So my job in the masjid is, I teach the classes, and I'm there 4 times a week. And the biggest problem that I see with Muslims is jahl. Jahl, just abject ignorance, right? Like literally like total ignorance. So at that point, because jahl is the issue, you can't blame them for anything else. So jahl is the disease that we have to attack. Doctors, right, they attack diseases. They treat diseases and prevent diseases, right? Preventative medicine. And they also attack disease. Our disease is jahl, right? And jahl is basically all, the answer of jahl is all of the above, right? Jahl is the main thing. Amongst those who do know, who do have some knowledge of deen, It's more of a struggle. They know that the temptations, the shahawat, are wrong for them to engage in and manifest and practice. So for them, it's important to supply and to offer a majlis of dhikr, in which they could wash away their sins. And we know the Prophet, it was one of the Sahaba stated that verily you enter one of these, I think maybe he was even one of the Tabi'een. Okay, in Imam Suyuti's Hawil al-Fatawi on his Bab of Fadl al-Dhikr, chapter 43. And in which he cites that you all, in other words regular Muslims, enter the Majlis al-Dhikr with a mountain of sins, and you leave it with a mountain of good deeds. So we try to facilitate and gather these shabab to Majalis al-Dhikr, because Majalis al-Dhikr, they wipe away, all right, these mountains of sins. And even the idea of don't do it at all, haram, yeah, we know that, obviously. But people are humans and people are weak, right? And people fall into shahawat. So therefore, the solution now becomes constantly wash it away, right? As the Prophet ﷺ said, تُخْطِئُونَ بِاللَّيْلِ وَالنَّهَارِ. You sin day and night. What if there was a river in front of your house? Would anyone of you have any dirt on him? They said, no, Messenger of Allah, he takes 5 showers a day, you're going to be clean. He said, likewise is your 5 salawats a day, right? Your 5 salat a day cleans you out. So the job is, it's hard, you can't forcibly change people, but you can offer them a way to remove the atham that they have upon them. And that's one of our paths and one of our approaches to these things. Dhikrillah is something very hard for people to do alone, right? And therefore, I don't know, do you have some kind of method, or is it mainly just your majalis of reviewing Quran? But that's basically, whatever the method is, the majalis, that's how the atham are removed. Yeah. Sure. Cosmology, epistemology, and methodology. Yeah. No.
That comment, I mean, you make that comment here in America, I understand that, but what if you go to a Muslim nation, like a Muslim country where secular law is supposed to be based upon, generally supposed to be based upon Quran and Sunnah?
All of these Muslim nations they say that, but ultimately when you look at the infrastructure of their law, it's all British common law. When you look at the infrastructure. And just look at who's making the laws, right? You're not going to see any ulama. Not even advisors, like official advisors, right? So, Allahu A'lam about the specific Muslim countries, but from what I know, let's say Egypt as an example, it's totally just British law, right? So, with an Islamic touch on it, so you can't even have a discussion. The discussion there is closed too. Actually, a study was done, I don't know if any of you have seen it, that they studied all the law codes out there, including inheritance, crime, marriage, etc. And which country do you think ended up having the highest percentage of parallel with Sharia? Any guesses? America? Nope. Saudi? Oh. Malaysia was like number 2, Ireland was number 1, right? So like total coincidence, right? It's just by chance. So, all right. Yeah. Yes. Go ahead. So my take on the question is, what's my opinion on the feminist movement? My take on it has always been that the term is used so broadly, right? And everyone defines it in a different way. Everyone defines feminism in a different way. But if the general definition of feminism is for women to be equal to men in all matters, social, economic, professional, etc., then we simply say that the foundation of this idea is erroneous on the level of defining the genders, because we do have a definition of the gender. The gender of the males, he is a manifestation of Sifatul Jalal, and his best example is the Anbiya. And the female gender is a manifestation of Sifatul Jamal, and her best examples are the Sahabiyat and the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. And all of the ahkam shar'iyah that Allah revealed for each gender is meant to guard and stimulate the development of those attributes. Right? To guard and stimulate the development of these attributes. And when we talk and do da'wah and teach, this is what we have to talk about. Because one of the things that the secular worldview is teaching is that gender has no definition. It's what you define it to be, right? That there is no gender at all. That it's completely social, right? Completely man-made. So if a Muslim eventually comes to adopt that belief, that gender is completely whatever people decide it to be, then for sure that's worldview. For sure then, right, when they go up the ranks to epistemology, methodology, and legislation, morality and legislation, there's going to be misguidance, for sure. See, the foundation was wrong. So this is what's called the secularization of gender, that we humans define gender, right? Rather, gender is something that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala created and defined for us. Yep. Okay. Okay. Yeah. All right. So first of all, for some of the young students here, what do we keep mentioning the word secularization and secular? What does that actually mean? What it means is the determination of a thing by other than divine guidance. Okay? The determination of a thing by al-aql only and no naql. By intellect only and no revelation. Not recoursing to revelation. This is what we mean by secular, right? When we say secular. That it's something that human beings determine on their own with no recourse for revelation. And this ultimately is jahiliyyah. It's ultimately what jahiliyyah is. No guidance from revelation. Okay? So the goal of Iblis is to remove the wahi from every sphere of life. To remove the influence of wahi from every sphere of life. And in this, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that He has a'immat al-kufr. Allah says, قَاتِلُوا a'immat al-kufr. Right? Fight a'immat al-kufr. So what does that mean? Kufr has imams. Just as we have imams. Because you have to know that Iblis is an imitator of Allah in everything. Where is the arsh of Iblis? On water. Why? Because kana arshuhu ala al-ma. Because Allah's throne is on water. Right? What does we have a'imma? He has a'imma. What are the subjects of his, who are some of his imams? Those who try to secularize the political systems. How we make laws. The economic systems, such as Karl Marx. Okay? He tried to secularize. Number one, the first thing, he was a philosopher. The first thing Karl Marx was a philosopher. And his philosophy was that there is nothing except al-madda, material life. There's no non-material life. All ideas are merely a result of material life. We say the total opposite, right? We say the origin is non-material, and the material is merely meant to be in line with the non-material, right? There was Allah and there was nothing else with Him. And then Allah said, kun fayakun, and the material life came to be. What does the material life do? Fall in line with the heavenly world. Okay? Then he was also an economist. From a philosopher, now he's also an economist. That's why he's such an influential figure. And in his economy, he said that everyone should be equal in what they have. Right? Everyone should be equal. And that nobody should own anything. The state should own everything and will give you all an equal share. Okay? That's a basic idea. It's not a total definition, it's a basic idea. Karl Marx is one of the imams. Who is another one of their imams? Sigmund Freud. Sigmund Freud is an imam one of their imams on two fronts. Psychology, okay, and sexuality. And he linked them. On psychology, one of his main features is that the chief source of psychological illness is that you have a desire which you don't release. A pent-up desire. Now what do we say? Al-kadhimin al-ghayth. Hold your anger. What do we say about shahawat? Al-iffa. Even there's a hadith which is not a tribute to it's a tribute to the Prophet, but it's not a sound hadith. Man ashiqa fa'affa famata mata shahidan. You've heard this hadith? Whoever falls in love with a woman, but he withholds his desire, he keeps it inside of himself, and then he dies the death of a martyr. Okay? Al-iffa. It is to hold. Ghadd al-basar. You want to look, but you don't look. To Sigmund Freud, this thing which we say is the highest of virtues, so high that we know that one of the shabab of the ummahs in the past, when the mountain had blocked the path, he made a wasila to Allah that he had the beautiful woman that he wanted to sleep with right in front of him, but he stopped himself right at the peak. And he stopped himself and he said, "Oh Allah, I stopped myself for your sake, so move this rock." And the rock moved. You all know this hadith, right? So the number one thing that we feel is the best of virtues, he considers the source of all mental illness. Right? So it's all the exact opposite. We say about economics, Allah creates fuqara and He creates aghniya. And everyone has rida. Marx is the exact opposite. No, there should be no difference between the two. Everyone should be the same. Okay. You see, it's always the exact opposite. Okay, let's go to Adam Smith. Adam Smith, he actually has a lot of good things he said. Okay, he's considered like the godfather of capitalism. But one of the things that he said was that the whole root of the economic system. What's the root of the economic system? Is we trade. Okay? Trade leads to development of industries, because if I know I have a good buyer, I'm going to develop more stuff. How do I develop industry? How do I develop things and make a school or make a factory or something? By getting a loan from the bank. Well, taking a loan is not haram, right? You can loan me $1,000, I'll pay you back. Well, how do I justify for people to give loans? Loans should not be a big part of life. It's a big part of life, but not a job. He said to himself, well, how can I make it a job? I want to make it a job for you to give a loan. Riba, right? So the whole basis of the whole system is riba. Okay? His whole economic system is based on riba. So now this matter moved into the sexual revolution in the 50s and 60s. That's where all the problems came in. And the issue of procreation. The issue of procreation was destroyed. Okay? It was destroyed by the hippie movement, which basically came with the movement of free sex. Everyone just sleep with everyone. So the matter of the family was destroyed. And now they go from the family to the person himself. Did it create confusion and chaos within you? Not within your household. No, within you, yourself. That is to question and make you start to think. What is a man? What is a woman? Who is to say what's a man? Who's to say what's a woman? And this is what the Prophet ﷺ said. All right. لعن الله المتأنثين والمترجلين. Okay, the one who is acting like a man who's acting like a woman, and the woman who's acting like a man, right? this itself is turned upside down. That there is no set definition of what is a man and what is a woman. Okay? There's no set definition, and however you want to be, you should be, and you'll start promoting men to wear high heels and lipstick, all right, and this type of thing. And if you're immune for this stuff, then good, that's good, if you're immune to it. But if you're going to end up doing any da'wah, in any way, shape, and form, and you should be very cautious, all right, then be very cautious and read up before you talk at any of these MSAs or even deal with them, because they're very touchy on the subject, and if you can't say the truth, then don't even go. In general, the belief that there is attributes of gender, there is a male gender, and the male should have certain attributes and should not have certain attributes, and there is a female gender, that she should have certain attributes and not have certain attributes, and that the interaction between them should be has guidance, that we have law on how we're supposed to interact. This subject, unfortunately, even many of the Muslims themselves don't believe in it anymore, especially the youth. So this is why we have to really go out and find the families that are accepting of the deen, and make sure you're educating the children early, okay? And make sure they're happy in their Islamic life so that they don't go elsewhere and start absorbing these poisons. And the only reason a Muslim would ever absorb these poisons is he wasn't taught. Jahl. That's it. It's jahl. Yeah. Sifatul Jalal is every attribute of Allah Azza wa Jal that relates to adl and quwwah. Okay, everything that has to do with strength and power. Okay, like Al-Qahhar. Okay. And every the Sifatul Jamal is every attribute that endears a person to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So what are the attributes that instill awe and fear? Those are Sifatul Jalal. And every attribute that inspires love. The best of the best, Sayyid al-Kawnayn sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he has a balance of both. But in general, the male will have the bulk of Sifatul Jalal with a sprinkling of Sifatul Jamal. And the female, in general, will have a bulk of Sifatul Jamal. Everything that makes one love Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is from Sifatul Jamal. Everything that softens the heart is from Sifatul Jamal. And a sprinkling of Sifatul Jalal. Now, even amongst the Sahaba, we had the opposite, right? We have the exception. We never make a rule about the exception. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called the exception. So you had Hassan bin Thabit, and you had Sayyidina Nusayba. They were opposite. That were the exceptions. Hassan bin Thabit, what is he into? Poetry, the arts, right? And when it came time for the battle, he was scared. He couldn't do it. The enemy was there, right? Who came at that moment? A Sayyidina Nusayba. Hassan bin Thabit couldn't do the job. She said, give me your sword. She took it, she cut the guy's head and threw it over the wall, right? So here you have an exception to the rule. But that's not the rule. Sayyidina Nusayba is the exception to the rule. So, do have exceptions to the rule, but in general, when we look at the attributes of Allah, anything that causes someone to have awe and fear and pride, this is what is Sifat al-Jalal. And anything that causes a person to have love and soften of the heart, okay, that is Sifatul Jamal. And all of the Sharia comes to help guard and stimulate within the man Sifatul Jalal and within the woman Sifatul Jamal. So work, for example. You go out there and you have to scratch out a living. You got to be strong. You can't go in there, how are you? You're here for the job interview. What kind of skills do you have? Alhamdulillah, nothing. Ana faqir miskin, right? No, this isn't interview to be a Sufi sheikh, okay? So you can say faqir and miskin, I'm nothing, right? You got to say what you are. And then someone else is going to come and do your work one day. What do you have to do? You have to stop him. So you have to scratch out a living, and a good living. And Allah has obligated you to do that so that she doesn't have to do that. We were just talking that sometimes you see in a store at 5 a.m. a woman in white hair waking up to do a lowly job too, service industry, right? No Muslim would allow his mom or his wife to get up at 5 in the morning to go serve strangers food. Strangers, right? Food. I mean, you should be embarrassed. Unless you're faqir, that's no problem, right? It happens. But if you're a husband and your wife is getting up because you're poor to go and work at 5 in the morning at old age, you as a man should be embarrassed. At the very least, go ask for a loan or for some sadaqah so she doesn't have to go and do that. Right? Yeah. Yeah, all the time. When you talk, and firstly, I'm very selective where I talk these days. Because what I said, that middle, I said there has to do the text, and then there's the context. That middle, especially at the universities and the masajid that don't have teachers, many Muslims have entrenched ideas from kufr, unfortunately, about these subjects, right? About these subjects. So I'm very selective, but I don't shy away from saying that that's our belief, because that's what our belief is. That is our belief, right? And anyone who's going to offer, I've never seen any other explanation of gender in Islam. This is it. What is Jalal and Jamal, right? The attributes of the masculine and the feminine. So there's no response. And when you go out there, you have to be very selective. And it's not like the olden days. It's not like the days we grew up when a Muslim is just a Muslim. That's it. And his biggest problem is he caught watching MTV once, right? That's not the problem, right? The problems are really deep. You had a question? Yep.
So when you say modern issues,
The subject, when you were outside, I said the importance of da'wah as teachers, the importance of knowing the context, and that in the middle are these areas where the kufr and the belief of a Muslim are mixed.
you say the number one issue right now for the students and all of us who will be graduating within the next 4 or 5 years, currently the biggest issue is secularization of our whole world.
Yes, so of course, as you know, in tasawwuf, in the muhlikat are of two branches. Ash-shahawat wa shubuhat. The muhlikat, what destroys a Muslim, nas'al Allah al-afiyah wa salama from all that for all us wal muslimin, is either shahawat, temptations, or shubuhat, false ideas. And shubuhat is the false ideas worse than shahawat. It is from one of the Imam Sufyan ibn Uyayna. Sufyan ibn Uyayna said, "Man ibtuliya bishahawat, yani narju al-ghufrana lah." If someone is tested by temptation, we can easily hope that he's forgiven. But who's tested by shubuhat, false ideas, he's in big trouble. And all the shubuhats come in, the secular understandings of all these subjects, economics, secular understandings of governance, legislation, sexuality, gender. The understanding of all these things without going back to the divine. And we say, right, whoever doesn't rule by Allah's rule, right? أُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الظَّالِمُونَ الْكَافِرُونَ الْفَاسِقُونَ. Right? Yes.
So if we start becoming selective about where we go, where we speak,
Yeah.
then that kind of like preaching to the choir, because those people mostly understand anyways about these things that we speak about. So how do we reach out to those people that are having confusions and
You have to go very slowly to those who are from them, who are open to listening and recognizing their own ignorance, and let them pull their friends in, right? But from my experience, those who want to go and face the cannon directly, right? You may end up harming yourself more, because it's not upon jahl, it's jahl murakkab. You're going to end up in an argument and a debate. And we know in tasawwuf, anytime an argument develops, love decreases, disappears. And we cannot be people like who go out there as the Wahhabis used to do, right? And pick fights. All they do is go out and pick a fight, right? That's what they used to do. You go out and they pick a fight. We don't do that. We can't do that. People will hate. لو كنت فظا غليظ القلب لانفضوا من حولك. If you're harsh and hard-hearted and fighting all the time, they'll flee from you. So, I mean, that's why this is on the internet. Internet is one of the good ways to do it. Yes?
You mentioned the exceptions. So what if somebody claims that I'm an exception? Like, majority of the people, they have like the qualities of men or women, but I'm the exception. What if they mention something like that?
Well, then they take their examples, still take their examples from the Sahabiyat. Right? For example, we know Sayyidina Umar, he had a woman on the Hisbah, that she would make sure that the marketplace was following the rules. So we would say, you still take the example of the Sahabiyat, the examples of the the exceptions of the Sahabiyat. And Sayyidah Aisha, right, was more vocal than the majority of women in the element of being vocal and having an opinion. She was also exceptional in her time. So we would say, okay, if you're an exception, then take the example of the exceptions of the Sahabiyat, right? They still observed Sharia. They still covered their bodies. Okay? So take them as an example. Okay? You had something to say?
In academia, so you taught at Yale for 6 years or so. Do you find that there's a potential for change on the minds of students, or is it getting worse and worse?
It was a bit less than 6 years, and it was, no. I basically decided that the time there is being wasted. And the question was, can the hearts and minds of people in academia be changed? It would take someone who is one of them, and even culturally one of them, right? Like the only reason Jonathan Brown can do it is he's culturally one of them. His mom was an academic, he's an academic, he's culturally one of them, right? But I really don't think that that battleground, it's so tilted, right? So tilted that I don't see that it's fruitful for anyone to go into that battleground. You're not even fighting a fair fight. It's tilted like this. Yeah.
So with the students, because most Muslims do go to university, so how do you challenge that? Because I know there's a distinction between them trying to get them to the masjid, but if they don't go to the masjid,
Yeah.
they're going to the MSA and they're staying, boarding and everything, going to board and university.
Yeah.
Can't get to them.
I think that you get to them through the outside programs, such as a weekend intensives, summer intensives, internet avenues, YouTube series, podcasts, online classes, live streams, and then occasional visits to their universities. For that reason, many of the dawah operations are now starting at a younger age. That you actually are too late. If you're going to someone at college, it's too late. You got to go at a younger age, right? So, and then it really has to be all of the above. So we have to try all these avenues and outlets to get to people, to reach them with the message. And they come. And ultimately, I think the internet, that's, our Shaykh, Habib Omar bin Salim bin Hafid says, no tool has been created by Allah except that He knows that it is needed for dawah, right? And that we may be asked on Yawm al-Qiyamah, I gave you all these tools, why didn't you use them, right? So we try to use all these tools, but while at the same time, I've seen way too many people try to go into the battleground of the universities, and they are the ones who get affected adversely. It's the opposite happens. Over time, chipping away, until all of a sudden, 6 years later, you don't recognize the person in front of you, right? You don't even recognize him anymore. Nas'alullah afiyah and salama from that. Yeah. Okay.
Our stance on American political and economic laws, such as equal pay and female voting rights.
Yep.
Can we apply either the maqasid of Sharia
I don't see that all those two specific matters. Yeah, you apply maqasid in those matters, right? That is there a specific nas, yay or nay on those matters? If the answer is no, then her suggestion is correct. You apply the maqasid. Likewise, when we said all these other political things like that are really not even political, it's just a worldly matter in which the shara in specific has neither promoted nor forbade, or maybe promoted in general or forbade in general, then yeah, you should apply the maqasid al-sharia in those matters. Yeah.
And for reference for all everyone, the issue of the biggest challenge being secularization of the world that we live in, what reference books would you recommend that's there? And because I don't think rarely we come across a Jummah khutbah this topic. When the reality is, like you mentioned, half of the crowd probably is affected, or more than half, by some Kufri ideology.
Yeah.
And have a very secular mindset on so many issues. So when you're, two questions I have. One is some references first, Muslim. Number two is when you're addressing a general crowd, at Jummah or any Jummah, local masjid or as an imam, how would you approach this topic within the Muslim community to kind of just start up this conversation, allow them to give something for thought that maybe my mindset is actually very anti-Islamic, I may have
Yeah.
by secular thought, and you start path of reformation.
Okay, good. So about the resources and references, then I think that the best one that's available to everyone right away is Yaqeen's website. Because that's the goal of Yaqeen. The purpose of Yaqeen's website, whatever it is, yaqeeninstitute.org or something, is to take these issues and put them into some palatable articles, easy to read. The other one is Daniel Hakikachu, and of course all the women are, because he's like, takes the gloves off, right? And sometimes they get upset with the generalizations. But at least he brings up serious issues. Daniel Hakikachu's blog, the Muslim Skeptic, that's his blog collection of all his articles. Okay. And yeah, I know that you can have some discussion on some of the points, but he brings up the points. What's another one? Those are the two that are bringing up issues, right? I try to bring them up on my page occasionally, all right? Those are the issues. As for a book to read on it, there is one on liberalism by Joseph Messad. Okay, if someone has internet on their, oh, you probably don't have it, but I think it's Joseph Messad. Okay, and that's a book that's, his book on liberalism is important, is good. Okay. Liberalism is basically all of what we're talking about is under the branch of the umbrella of liberalism. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Liberalism is the falsafa, is the name of the religion that they're promoting, or humanism, secular humanism. The other guy that talks about it mainly from the evolutionary element is Hamza Sortsis. So even this, we said economics, we said sexuality, family, legislation. Even the beginning, the origin of the human being has been secularized through Darwinism and evolution, right? So they have a complete package that they're giving you, a complete package. And Hamza Sortsis, the Greek brother who became Muslim from England, his work, and I can't remember the name of his website, but he's attacked this stuff. Okay, so you could read all these, if you read through these, and then you'll see that they'll refer you to different books within. Now, how do we approach this at the Ammi level? Is by the opposite. You don't introduce them to the idea, but you introduce them to the ayah of the Quran, all right, or the hadith, and you explain the nas, and then you repeat. You have to constantly repeat the basics. You're going to go out there, and 75% of what you've studied, you will never speak about at Jummah, right? And depending on what job you take, you may never speak of it at all. So you have to repeat over and over and over, right? The ayat al-ahkam. You know that there are the ayat al-ahkam, right? The ayat that are the basis for our responses to these things and what we establish as the haqq. Yani, for example, إِنَّا خَلَقْنَاكُم مِّن ذَكَرٍ وَأُنثَى. Does any of the imams of the past ever consider this to be ayat al-ahkam? Right? Never. But today, it's big. It's the hottest issue on campuses is gender, right? And now we have a very simple ayah. We have created you of males and females. Big revelation, right? It's become now from ayat al-ahkam, right? There's males and females. I haven't told my kids yet that there are some guys who think that they could be girls. I want to record them. The minute that I tell them that there's a guy who thinks he's a girl and a girl who thinks she's a girl who thinks she's a boy, I want to see the reaction, the fitrah. Like I always also record them when they take their first sip of a fizzy drink, right? Because they get shocked by all the carbon coming in their faces, right? I want to see what they're going to do. I think they're just going to laugh. I don't think they might not even understand what's going on, right? So, it's an issue. The ayat of the khalq, the ayat of the khalq are very important, okay? Ayatul khalq is extremely important. ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم. Surah Al-Kahf, right? وما كنت متخذ المضلين عضدا. This ayah goes at the origin of every explanation of the origins of man. It goes to the foundation of every explanation of the origins of man. Right? That, they didn't see it. It happened in the past. How can you be certain of anything? You need eyewitnesses. Evidence does not give you certainty. You have to take a leap of faith. So the evolutionists, the Darwinists, who tell you there's evidence. First of all, yeah, there's evidence. But does all evidence lead to the same conclusion? No. There's a difference between evidence and proof. Evidence. All of the Quran is evidence, but it only leads to certain conclusions, right? All of the records that you see and all the scientific things that they're pulling out, it's evidence. Yeah, it's evidence. But what does it lead to? They're saying it leads to that all humans had this same origin of apes. Okay. First, in the 70s, they were telling you, your origin was apes. Now they changed it. They say you and apes have the same origin. Okay? So they changed their own idea. That's the first thing. All right. So this ayah is one of the ayahs that you should always be talking about. Surah Al-Kahf. Ayah number 51. ما أشهدتهم خلق السماوات والأرض ولا خلق أنفسهم ما كنت متخذ المضلين. Allah calls them mudillin, those who lead you astray on the origin of the universe and the human being. So actually, when I see one of them, I say, yeah, actually a proof, right? Because if you weren't around, we would all say, Allah, you said there's mudillin on the issue of the khalq. Where are they? So you're here. Also, the amongst from the fitan that you could put a list there, and this is what we're going to go over in the next talk, but the doubters and the refuters of the sunnah itself. Or those who refute the sunnah itself. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, that would be great. That would be great. A'immatul Kufr. Yeah. Marx, Freud, all these guys. Smith. All these. That's a podcast right there, actually. A'immatul Kufr. Actually, I have to text that to Alex. And yes.
For students after graduation, if they want to seek advanced study, what would you recommend? What recommend university, it sounds like in Islamic studies?
Advanced studies?
Yeah. University of Chicago, something like that.
Honestly,
Preferably in the United States.
like what does a person want to do? That's the question. Because if he knows what he wants to do, then he could go get something, avoid the bad, take the good, and move on. But if it's flowing and he doesn't know what to do, that's the biggest problem. Like whenever you're sort of a floater and you really don't know what is it that you want, you can end up, I wouldn't even say being misguided, right? But wasting time at the bare minimum. So if a person knows what they want, the method though, I would say that the method, this is what I can tell you that's concrete. The method would not be to choose the name of the university or even the major, but rather the professor. If there's a solid professor out there that you feel will respect you and your religion and can give you the education that you're looking for, right? And can open the doors for you that you want. That's the goal. That's the right way to do it, right? Is to go for the professor, right? And that's when it's worthwhile. Because it's like if you look at the curriculum or the name of the program, you might get a professor that really wastes your time and has personal access to grind against Muslims. And that happens all the time. So go to the professor. Do you have anything specific that you're looking to study? Oh, okay. If you go with Jonathan Brown, that'd be great. Yeah, because you know he's going to respect you, for sure. And he's solid. And the library there is great. For Islamic studies, you need a library. And of course, everything's in Shemina, but you can't quote Shemina in a thesis, right? So you need the library. And the library there is one of the best in the Western Hemisphere, actually. It's definitely from the top 10, for sure. And in America, it's probably in the top 5. And of course, you're going to have a professor there that respects you, respects your deen, and you would probably from now contact him and see what is it to get in. That's good. Yeah, that's good. I think you're in good position to study with him, John. Yeah. A lot of the Yaqeen people study with him too, like 2 or 3 people from Yaqeen are there. Yeah.
For students here, what's the way forward in regards to what we should focus on and skills that we should develop?
It again depends on what is your goal. If your goal is to advance students, to teach students, then what you should be focusing on is your ulum. If your goal is something, because I said that the dawah is 2 types of people, the one who goes out and the one who builds inside. If your goal is to build inside, then it's ilm. And ta'lim, learn how to teach, right? And be a mahir fil ilm, like skilled in knowledge. And if you want to go outside, then you need to know these shubuhat and how to refute them, right? As well as teaching as well. You're going to have a mix of both. Yeah.
Can you aim for both?
Yeah, why not? That's the ideal. The ideal is that you have a foot in both, right? You need that. It makes you better at both, right? So you're mahir fil ilm, but you also know the shubuhat that are out there, and you also need to know how to reach people, communications. So not only shubuhat, okay, so let's say I know what the issues are, and I know the deen itself, the text itself, the foundations. All right, well, how do I communicate? So how to communicate both literally how to talk, but also the actual technology of it, right? The technology of how do I do this? What are the harms of it, right? That whole field of dawah it's a big part of dawah. Because what is dawah? Communicating a message from A to B. So what's the message? It's the deen. To whom? The context that we talked about earlier. Now how is the next part? How do you communicate that? What is the best way to communicate that? Right? So that's really what you're going to start looking at. What is the best manner by which, right? Is it a lecture? A story? Right? Nothing, just company, suhbah, right? It's going to be a mix of all these things, right? It's going to be a mixture of all these things. Sometimes it's a lecture, sometimes it's just suhbah. Sometimes it's amr bil ma'roof and nahi an munkar. Right? That's a good question. Yeah.
So this kind of going back to Sifat and Jamal and Jalal. So I was wondering where does I guess definition of manhood and womanhood came from? Like, is it based on observation or like?
Yeah, you have to read deeply in the seerah, and you have to read deeply and between the lines almost in the Qasas al-Sahaba. So you have the book Hayat al-Sahaba, right? You have to read deeply between the lines because the Prophet made a statement. He said, cursed is the man who tries to be like a woman, cursed is the woman. Okay, then what is the man and what is the woman then? That there has to be. a objective definition of what is a man and what is a woman. What do they do and how do they act? So you have to look at the, and read between the lines and extract. Yeah.
Is there anyone of like the ulama of the past who mentioned this? Like, so we can, let's say if somebody asks us where do you get this from, we could like attribute it to them.
Not really, because they did, the people back in the day in those times were normal. Yeah. So only us, we have to deal with this. Right. Yeah.
A lot of the top secular societies, they try to differentiate between sex and gender. So how do you?
Yeah, we don't separate between biological sex and gender. That's that's a great point that I hadn't brought up, is that the way that they do it is by separating your biological sex from your gender, right? And we do not separate between the two. Of course, then they're going to come and try to cite for us the mukhannath, right? The mukhannath is this ibtila from Allah. The mukhannath is the one who is born with both organs, male and female organs. And the fatwa that is the fatwa of Sayyidina Ali, how he goes to the bathroom is the determining organ, gender. If he goes to the bathroom from his male organ, then he's a male. If he has a male organ, okay, if he has a male organ but does not use it to go to the bathroom to pass water, he attributes himself as a woman, and all the ahkam of the women take place for him, and he may have a surgically removed, right? He is a woman, right? Well, she was, all right, she's a woman. If he does not have that, if he has that body part, if he has the male organ and he goes to the bathroom with it, okay, then he's a man. And oftentimes they say as well, wait until the person has reached bulugh to see. The other question is hayd, right? To see what they have. If there's hayd, then that overrides and he takes the ahkam of a woman. So that stuff is all, and that happens when? Like very, very rarely. But we have rules on that. It's no problem at all. It's a test from Allah. But the answer to the question is we do not separate between sex and gender. And if someone says, well, what's the proof that you don't separate? No, that's a negative. So you have to prove the opposite. It's upon you to prove the opposite, right? If a Muslim says, well, what's the proof of that? It's firstly, I guarantee you, if anyone ever challenges you on that, tell them firstly, can you tell me what sex and gender are in Arabic? Because they can't, right? They can't. We don't even have such, we have nikah is a fi'l. It's a verb, okay? And gender, we just have al-dhakar wal-untha, right? Al-jins, okay? So it's upon them to prove that, because that's the claim. Because you have something in law called the bara'atul dhimma. It's almost like, it's called bara'atul dhimma in Arabic, and it's called the, what is it? I can't remember the actual term in English. Not burden of proof. No, it's that, it's basically that a default setting as is, right, does not need to be proven. Something like that, right? It doesn't need to be proven. It's the opposite that has to be proven. And one of the uses of this is if someone tells you that you Muslims say that the Quran has never changed, right? Prove it, that this is only the one Quran, right? We say, wait a second, it's the opposite, right? You prove that there's another one. Because right now on the earth, we have one Quran. And the qira'at, which we have no problem with. And even the ahruf that are mentioned in the tafsir, no problem, right? That's not changing anything, it has no effect. Right? Al-ayn al-manfush, suf al-manfush, that doesn't make a difference. It's not on tawheed or ahkam. So, it's upon them, show us, find us that other Quran. Find us the original Quran. So it's upon them. So you have to know that there are some accusations and questions that you don't have to answer. You have to, like ping pong, just respond it back and have them bring you the proof. Yeah. Yeah. That's correct.
How would you advise one, those who are teaching people or bringing this to their attention that, their beliefs may have been based upon these things? How do you, like, for example, in your practice of MSI,
Yeah.
how would you go about, introducing that topic?
I would introduce it directly. All right? I would say that we all make moral claims, right? What's right and what's wrong. Just the idea, I would begin with the idea of moral claims, a moral statement. Because people make moral statements all the time, right? This is discrimination. This is phobic, right? What is that? A moral statement. Or a value judgment. It's the same thing. Okay? Pretty much the same thing. So people have to understand what that is. It's a claim that something is right, something is wrong. Something is good, something is bad. Something is wholesome, something is evil. They must recognize that that exists. Now, if you're going to make such a statement, you have to be intelligent enough, right, to back it up, right, with some proof. If you're going to make proof and you need evidence, where's your evidence going to come from? That's epistemology. Where does evidence come from, right? So I would start with, it's very common that people make moral claims, like this is inequality. This is this phobic or that phobic, right? This is judgmental, right? And you have to show people and sometimes raise their, to their attention, you're making a value statement and a moral judgment. Moral judgments are all based upon moral sources. Sources of morality. That's epistemology. So what is your source of morality? If they say, well, common sense. Well, we say that that's not a source at all, right? That's no source. That is a source, but it's not an ultimate because your common sense is different from my common sense. It's different from Hitler's common sense. Because if you ask Hitler, he was also using common sense, right? That's his common sense, right? And the guys at Wall Street that frauding the whole nation and the whole world, they're using their common sense. That they lost in the world over $1 trillion of people's money, right? That they lost it, and then that they get a $700 billion bailout and take bonuses while all the other Americans lost their homes. For them, that's common sense, right? Because these banks can't fail. So common sense is not something. Or universal values. There's no such thing exists as universal values. The very few things are ever universal. Like murder is wrong, stealing is wrong, smiling is good, right? Charity is good. Very few things are universal. Everything else is by agreement of society or some other source of knowledge, right? So all of these types of things have to be recognized as moral statements. Moral statements and value judgments have moral sources. So you ask a Muslim, what is your moral source, right? And the answer, eventually you want to get them to say the book and the sunnah, right? And once they say the book and the sunnah, now we say, okay, great. How do we interpret the book and the sunnah? That's usul al-fiqh, right? And we have something called the majority opinion. Why is that valuable? Because Allah says in Surah An-Nisa, right? وَمَا يُشَاقِقَ الرَّسُولِ مِنْ بَعْدِ مَا تَبَيَّنَ لَهُ الْهُدَى وَيَتَّبِعْ غَيْرَ سَبِيلِ الْمُؤْمِنِينَ نُوَلِّهِ مَا تَوَلَّى وَنُصْلِهِ جَهَنَّمَ وَسَاءَتْ مَصِيرًا. We abandon him to what he's chosen. And who of the mu'mineen etches out a sabil? Sabil al-mu'mineen. Who etches out a sabil? A path in religion other than the mujtahid imams. Right? So that is the mujtahid imams. Right? لن تجتمع أمتي على ضلالة من رآه المسلمون حسنا فهو عند الله حسنا. Right? What the Muslims find to be good, then Allah finds it good. The interpretation of this is that what the imams agree upon is urf, that is good, right? Is good. And لن تجتمع أمتي على ضلالة. It's not even a sahih hadith, but the Imam say that its meaning is sound, right? My ummah will never unify upon a misguidance. So the jama'ah, the truth is always with the jama'ah in Islam. In kufr, the jama'ah is always upon falsehood. In tuta' akthara man fil ard yudilluka an sabilillah. So that's basically how you would approach it. Yeah. Time's up? Oh, Jazakullahu Khairun.
Barakallahu feekum.
Barakallahu feekum. Subhanakallah.
So there, you can have follow-up questions with Sheikh afterwards as well, during lunchtime, after Dhuhr, etc. And then will be some of our, the next session is, just go over that in just a minute. Yeah, so after Dhuhr, if there's no actual class with Sheikh, but if there's someone who doesn't have a class going on, if there's a free period for somehow after Dhuhr, then if you have any questions, do that. And also be very beneficial if your questions are pre-written, you can give it to him during lunchtime so that in our evening discussion, which is going to be at 3:05 to 4:15 p.m., that would be something, if you have some questions from this class, you can have them ready here and inshallah you can answer that. And then after Asr Salah will be the last session between Asr and Maghrib inshallah. Jazakullahu Khairun. Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, subhanakallah wa bihamdihi, nashhadu an la ilaha illa anta nastaghfiruka wa natubu ilayk.